Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this clip, but before you do, please hit subscribe. So I've spent a lot of time kind of watching some of your other stuff and obviously been getting to know you and following you, but there isn't a lot on your growing up, like when you were a kid. And you've already said it once, you said my Indian mother.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to just start out with like, how did you grow up? What influence did your parents have on you? Like, what are the core things that came from early on that kind of made you who you are today?
Yeah. I haven't talked about it a lot. I'm really like a collision of two very weird worlds.
Yeah.
My mother is Indian, grew up in Bangalore, India. My father is white Jewish from the Bronx
Okay.
in New York. And my mom came over for college when she was 18, hadn't told her parents she was applying, kind of was like the mischievous youngest child, applied to school in the US, came over. And my dad was like following this very nerdy academic track. Like he was going to go become a professor. And so he was like marching on his path. She was marching on hers. Both of them were basically supposed to marry. My dad was supposed to marry a nice white Jewish girl. My mom was supposed to marry a nice Indian boy. And like that was supposed to be their life.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, they crossed over by 2 weeks when my dad was finishing his PhD at Princeton. My mom was just starting a master's there. And my mom was working in the library. My dad was like studying for his dissertation defense or whatever it was. And my mom asked him for ice cream and they ended up going out on a date. And during those 2 weeks, they connected and, the rest was sort of history in terms of their relationship. The very unfortunate thing, which I haven't really talked about publicly, is my dad's family didn't accept it. And it was 1982, 1980 when they first met, I guess. So times were slightly different.
Yeah.
An interracial relationship, maybe it was, it's still crazy to me, but maybe slightly more controversial at the time. And, neither family was super excited about the idea of them not following the path, but his family, his dad really didn't accept it. And basically told him he had to choose between my mom or his family.
Wow.
And he walked out the door. And to this day, I've never met my dad's father, who passed away many years ago. I've never met his mother. He has siblings I've never met. I have first cousins I've never met.
Really?
Like a full separation from the family over this. And look, there's a water under the bridge effect after a number of years that it's very hard to remedy or change. I often think about whether we should go and visit his mother. She's quite old now. Now life is a lot different.
Yeah.
The influence of his father isn't around anymore necessarily. But a really sad thing that I think caused my mom a lot of grief as well, of just feeling like she was the reason that my dad had this breakup with his family. But what it meant for my own upbringing was that I just felt like my dad was the most unbelievably supportive father I could imagine. And we weren't rich. Like my dad was a professor, he's an academic, so it's not like he was a businessman making tons of money or a hedge fund guy. We were middle class. But my dad worked really hard and also found a way to support me in everything I was doing, both with his own physical time being there and also just with his energy. And to this day, I think back on that and I think about it a lot in the context of the type of father I want to be. I just always knew that my dad believed in me and that he had my back.
Yep.
And that is just such a powerful thing as a kid, feeling like your parents have your back and that they believe in you. And when they pushed me, which they did, because both of them had really high standards for what they thought my sister and I should achieve, older sister, I always knew it came from a place of belief rather than something that they wanted. Like it wasn't about, hey, go get this accolade because we want to sound impressive to our friends and go brag about our kids, which I think a lot of parents do these days. It was always about like, we believe in you and we believe you are capable of this thing and we're supporting you in this thing because we know what you're capable of and we want you to go and push yourself. And that's just such a powerful thing in hindsight.
It's huge. I mean, I just got done reading a book by John Eldredge, and he just says all little boys, all they really want in life is to know that they have what it takes. And that continues on into manhood. He talks about women. They want to know that they're beautiful and that they're seen. But for men, we want to know that we have what it takes. And it starts as being a father. Like you get a lot of that strength from your father.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, there's just so many powerful lessons in that honestly, I don't feel like we ever vocalize to our fathers. The things that we feel like we appreciate in hindsight or learned or, that we saw them embody. I mean, my dad worked about as hard in like the lowest leverage career path that you could possibly choose. I mean, we're going to talk, I'm sure, a lot about business, about leverage, about all the things that we're doing to try to create leverage in our lives. The academic track is one of the lowest time leverage things you can possibly do because it's all about research output. And research output, there was no AI. Like research output was grinding into the ground to put out papers. And my dad has grinded into the ground more like substantive papers than almost anyone else within his field. I mean, he's truly a leader within his field, and it's incredible to see the people that he's, connected and impacted as a result. But that meant hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of hard-working hours to go into it with not a massive financial reward on the back end of it, right? Like you're not, even the Nobel Prize winners, like you're not making $100 million for winning the Nobel Prize. There's, it's an accolade and it, puts you in a place of esteem, but you're not getting some huge reward. So I saw him work extremely, extremely hard on something, but then always find the time to be there for my sister and I and for my mom. And that meant like he would get home from work. He would always be home for dinner, to have dinner with the family. We'd always sit down together. And if I asked him to go outside and play catch, he would go outside and play catch with me. And when I was a kid, I didn't appreciate that. I was just like, oh yeah, my dad plays catch with me. Now I look back and I say, damn, like he must have been so tired at the end of a long day, having to think about complex problems all day and deal with tons of people. And he always had the energy to step up and go outside and play with me. Because I think about it in my own life now, like I'm tired at the end of the day. And when my son, he's one now, he's kind of crazy, he's going around doing things, it tires me out.
Yeah.
And so the ability to like flip that switch and have energy and do those things when your kids want you to, I just admire it so, so much in hindsight. And it really cemented an incredible relationship that I feel like carries through to this day that I have with my dad.
I love it. We have that in common. My dad was a lawyer till he was 37, came home and he was a partner at a law firm, came home and said, I want to become a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Went back to undergrad at 38 to get prerequisites, and we started medical school. I was 7 and he was 39.
Wow.
When he went back to medical school. So basically, like my early years from 8 to 15 was a father similar to yours, about as even lower leverage of time. $0 for medical school for 4 years. He was always on call. You could tell he was tired, but he always had a window for me when I needed it. And at the time, like you said, probably just one thing much of is like that's what dads do when their kids ask them. I'm just curious, what does your dad teach? What
economics was his main field of study, so like economics and demography.
Okay.
So a lot of work around like population growth and health and aging in the developing world.
Okay.
So a lot of his work was like around Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa. Fortunately, I got to travel with him on a lot of that work, so I got to see a lot of the world in those early years. That was incredible and substantive in terms of my own life.
Okay, and then what are the core tenets of a Indian mother? Like what?
I joke about this all the time on Twitter that like my Indian mother is still disappointed in me that I didn't win like a Rhodes Scholarship.
But you hear it often, like an Indian mother brings with them some like core things.
Yeah, there's a level of like playful harassment that comes with having an Indian mother of like, wanting you to do more and do things. And the culture, Indian culture is very social and family oriented. I think about this all the time as an amazing feature of Indian culture. My grandmother, on my mom's side, my grandfather, her husband, passed away in 2007.
Okay.
For 13 years following that, my grandmother did not go a single day without having someone come and call on her, check on her, spend time with her, be around her, ask her how she was doing. Until COVID hit, when she wasn't able to because of lockdowns and no one was able to come see her.
Oh, wow.
My grandmother aged more over the 2 years of COVID than she had over the 13 years leading up to that, because the social connection is so important to your overall health, how your mind continues to function. But the culture is one that is so powerful around that social connection, where like in America, if someone passes away, maybe for a month that happens. People go and show up and they're there and they're cooking food for the person. They're there and supporting them. And that's great. But for 13 years, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's just hardwired, ingrained into the society. And it's such a great feature. It's also something that leads to a lot of like overbearing parents, I think. And I actually don't consider my mom to be particularly overbearing. But what she does have is very high standards and she holds my sister and I in very high regard of what she thinks we're capable of. And so that always came across to me growing up as like, oh, if I don't do this, my mom is not going to be impressed or disappointed, or or happy with me and whatever it was. My sister was also like the golden child. And she was my older sister. She was 3.5 years older than me. And she was always the one that was like getting the best grades in school. And so I would inevitably, and maybe other people can relate to this, I would get to whatever grade I was starting. First day of school, I'd go into the class. They'd be reading off like the attendee list. They'd mispronounce my name, but they would see like, they'd say Sahil Bloom. And they'd say, and I'd raise my hand and they were like, oh, are you Sonali's brother? And they would have this look of hope of like, oh, this is going to be our star student. And inevitably within 2 weeks, I would disappoint them, whatever it was. Because I was a shithead. I was like, I was a little boy. I was like running around playing sports with my friends and, doing whatever bad stuff I wasn't supposed to do in class.
Yeah.
And so that was actually quite tough for me during my childhood years because I always felt like I was disappointing someone. And it led to me feeling like I really needed to carve my own path. And my mom didn't understand baseball or that sports were a path that you could like get into college and that there was these opportunities around. And so it was very weird for her. Like she saw me getting B's and B pluses in high school and thought that I was going to be like a failure living on the streets. Like I was going to be under a bridge somewhere or something like that. Like I really think in her mind, that was what it was. Like her hopes of having a Rhodes Scholar son were gone. As it turned out, I was actually quite good at baseball and all the energy I applied to that led to something really great. But it's been this ongoing joke in our family that like, oh, I didn't get a Rhodes Scholarship. And then, I didn't end up taking a job at McKinsey. And then I didn't become a doctor or a lawyer. And now you're like writing for, what are all these things? And honestly, there are certain ways in which it has impacted decisions that I've made. Like, when I went to raise my venture fund, I did a traditional fund rather than a rolling fund because part of it was like, I want something real and substantive that I can like show my mom. When I was doing my book deal, I like signed a book deal with Penguin Random House and that felt very official. Like, oh, I'm not just a Twitter writer, mom. Like I have a book deal from Penguin Random House. Like my grandmother knows what that is in India. So, it's something that I joke about, but there are definitely real ways that, that my Indian mother has impacted the way that I've thought about pursuing things and
I love it.
The officialness of it.
Is it fair to say that she's proud of you now? Or are there
so.
Still levels to this stuff?
I think she's most proud of the type of father and husband that I am more than anything else today. She knows that I am deeply, deeply protective of my wife and son. And, in a lot of ways, I think that being the protector and feeling like I'm able to kind of step up for the people that I care about is the most important thing in my world. Yeah. And I think of, any financial success and business success as all part of that too, of like, you're doing the things you need to do to take care of your family. If I were to get hit by a bus, I want to make sure that my family is taken care of and that things are okay for them. And I think my mom has kind of gotten to see me embrace these different changes in my world and how I'm running at different things that I'm excited about. I think she gets really excited about that.
I love it.